Good evening. I'm Audrey Clement, independent candidate for Arlington County Board. As an 11-year Westover resident and longtime civic activist, with a PhD in political science and service as a congressional fellow, I am running to reform county government. At 23%, Arlington's office vacancy rate is at an all-time high. In Roslyn, more than 2.7 million square feet of office space sit empty, including a 35-story trophy office building near the Roslyn Metro that remains vacant almost 2 years after construction. Yet the county just approved the sale of parkland in West Roslyn for another office development. Not only will the deal diminish the quality of life for Roslyn residents, it makes no economic sense in the current real estate market. A number of federal agencies previously located in Arlington, including the National Science Foundation, Fish and Wildlife Service, and TSA, have moved out due to escalating rents driven by higher taxes. Yet business tax relief isn't on the table. We also face a school enrollment crisis that County Board has failed to address. In 2014, the school board itself predicted a 2,500 classroom seat deficit even after approving a $450 million capital budget. County Board plans to roll out a new affordable housing master plan, mandating 15,800 new units of affordable housing at 632 units per year for the next 25 years. The cost to the county probably exceeds $90 million per year, which is not sustainable. Meanwhile, Arlington County Board pays lip service to the so-called Arlington Way while routinely ignoring citizen input. If elected, I pledge to restore democracy to county government by acting transparently, not simply rubber stamping done deals and bad decisions. To do that, I need your help. Vote Clement for County Board. Together we can make the Arlington Way more than an empty phrase. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you to the Civic Federation for hosting us. Thanks to all of you for being here. I'm Cristol. In running for the Arlington County Board over the past 6 or 7 months, I've had the opportunity to reflect a lot on what it'll mean to sustain Arlington. Sustaining Arlington, to me, starts with rebuilding trust. And a lot of this falls to the kind of leaders we elect, those more concerned with hearing from the community, all sides, and balancing points of view, rather than imposing a particular ideology. It also comes down to this sort of strategies that these leaders do to help their work. For example, using our new independent auditor to help the county board apply additional rigor to its decision-making, especially on big projects. Sustaining Arlington, to me, means protecting our middle class. One of the most common things that I hear at doors, and I heard in the lobby tonight, is, there is no way my husband and I could afford our house today. We are overdue to look at the way our regulations might be influencing the economics of teardowns versus preservation and modest addition to single-family homes, might be keeping longtime homeowners from developing the modifications that could help them age in place, and at the ways our policies ought to be amended to encourage innovations like micro-units that can help the next generation of Arlingtonians get a foothold. Sustaining Arlington, to me, means addressing our commercial vacancy rate to keep the residential tax burden manageable. And it means balancing our facilities and land use needs of parks and schools to keep Arlington attractive and strong. Sustaining Arlington, to me, does mean diverse perspectives on our 5-member county board, and I believe I offer a balance of experience and openness. My experiences as a commissioner, as an appointed member of the APS Advisory Council on Instruction, have given me insight into Arlington's unique context. My work as a policy consultant, helping communities like ours develop strategic plans and engage residents, afford me valuable comparative perspective. But as you can probably tell, I haven't been around forever, and that means I'm not locked into ways of doing things, and I'm keen to learn from Arlington's uniquely informed citizens. I look forward to your questions, and I hope to earn your vote on November 3rd.
Well, the podium remains the same. Good evening, folks. As you know, I'm Mike McMahon. I'm your former president, and I'm running for Arlington County Board. I'm a 21-year resident of the county, and besides being the former president of the Arlington County Civic Federation, I spent the last 8 years on the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission, overseeing the budget for Arlington County, and I was a 2-term president of the Maywood Community Association. I'm an experienced leader within the community that has a consensus-building record. I'm married to my wife, Chris, and I have 2 sons, both of which have gone through the Arlington County school system. I have one senior right now at HB Woodlawn, and this is his final year, so I understand the schools. I'm a communications attorney and a small business owner. My campaign is about getting back to basics. We again need to start listening to the community and hear their needs. Today we have an issue with Fire Station number 8 where the community wants the station to stay, but the county wants to move it to a site that does not adequately address the broader community's concerns. We need a task force put in place, as we did with the Cherrydale Fire Station, in order to make sure that that fire station is put in the right place so that it can meet the needs of the community. We need to pave our streets. Our streets in certain portions of the county, such as Military Highway and 16th Street, are awful, and they are unacceptable in the neighborhoods. And for a county that has $1 billion budget, this should not be that way. We need to fix our aging infrastructure. We have up to 22 water mains that break every week sometimes in the county. And our infrastructure is 100 years old and it needs to be replaced. We need to fix neighborhood conservation because neighborhood conservation is broken and we need to make sure it's well funded. I will be a good steward of your money and make sure that money is spent on schools and parks and that we alleviate the overcrowding and expand and enhance our parks. No more $1 billion bus stops. I want to ensure business development. I want to get the occupancy rate down below 22%, and I want to hold a summit with landlords to hear their thoughts about how we can do so. I pay the default tax and it is high compared to other places in the metro area, and we need to lower that. So I look forward to our discussion tonight, and thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christian Dorsey, and I seek your support and ultimately your vote to represent you on the county board. Now, this election provides us with an opportunity to choose leaders who are competent to make the right policy decisions concerning revitalizing our commercial sector, ensuring that Arlington becomes more affordable, that we provide quality municipal services, and that we have adequate resources devoted to the things that we all need. But it also means choosing leaders who embrace meaningful engagement with our community and who are committed at their core to transparency in their decision making. My journey in Arlington reveals me to be such a leader. Now, I moved to Arlington 22 years ago this month and have lived in the gamut of all of our offerings, from a basement apartment, a garden, high-rise, a townhouse, and for the last 8 years, my wife Rachel and I have raised our 2 children in Columbia Forest, one of our great single-family neighborhoods. Similarly, my work has evolved to include teaching high school students civics. But then, as I advanced my education and my career, I served as CEO for nonprofits that, among other things, promoted literacy development for disadvantaged children, and also partnered to create moderate income housing, all in Arlington County. And for the last 8 years, I have had the privilege of working on economic policy for a nationally renowned think tank where one of my principal areas is to help lawmakers develop a national budget that is both programmatically effective and fiscally responsible. Now, taken together, all of my life and work experiences lead me to being eager and ready to face the challenges that we face in Arlington. And we're going to need to work together to realize a vision where housing and schools policy complement one another to create diverse and sustainable neighborhoods, where growth provides increased opportunities and doesn't just kick down the road the impacts that we must all pay for later. And we must all pursue a vision where we seek to enhance and not diminish our park, open space, and recreational facilities so that this can be the kind of Arlington that lives up to its full potential. Thank you all very much.
If you could approach the stand, and then we'll have Mr. Fallon, Mr. Gurney, and then Ms. Hobart as well. Will you please keep your questions to 30 seconds, and then it's 90 seconds for each candidate, please. I'm sorry, we do have to share microphones.
Thank you. In each of your opening statements, each of you recognized or addressed the issues with community engagement. Can you explain to us that if elected, what processes would you put in place to rectify this? Thank you.
We started in reverse, right?
Correct.
So, Ms. Bushin, thank you for the question. You know, I'm a believer in old school outreach in addition to new school technology. Old school outreach means simply talking to people and making sure you do that early, often, and repeat as necessary. You don't just check off a box to say that you've done a pro forma thing, you actually engage with people. That means when things are happening in the community, you don't have to wait for a public meeting or a gathering or a special event. We know, as we can see from this gathering, people who are committed civically in Arlington are not shy. We know who you are, and we engage with each other on a regular basis. We ought to keep that up regularly, not just every year come election time. So when it comes first, old school engagement means letting people know about what you're thinking and inviting them to share their thoughts and learn more and participate on the process. Then on another level, we have to embrace new school technology as a way to further expand the field of people who are involved. And there are all kinds of great civic engagement apps, some of which we're trying and pioneering, not pioneering in Arlington, but we're adopting in Arlington, that can seek to expand the ways that we reach out to people. And then finally, we have to expand the offerings for folks, to not just be meetings at the times that we become accustomed, but to recognize that people have non-traditional schedules and may want to meet in non-traditional places, and using all of these approaches to make sure we are capturing not only the sense of the community, but as broad a sense of the community as possible.
Well, I believe that the Arlington way is a little bit broken these days, to tell you the truth. We're not listening to the community about projects as they come about. You know, communities aren't brought in at the front end of the project scheduling and how things are done. They're usually brought in at the back end. And because they're brought in at the back end, there's not much say for the community, and it usually just happens, right? Unless community civic activists such as us stand up and say, enough is enough, it's time for that to change. I believe John Bystad has done a wonderful job of outreach into the community over the past year, and we need to keep that community outreach up. Today, if we go back in time, most of the county board members really have not engaged much into the outreach into the community and attended to civic association meetings and talked about the issues. And that needs to change because, you know, we're all taxpayers in this county and we all have a voice and we should do the right things. I think that Kristen's right about new technology. We need to use technology today to reach those folks out there who rely on technology and don't really rely on face-to-face, unfortunately, because old face-to-face meetings seem to be dying as the next generation moves into play. But you know, face-to-face is the best way to do business, and we need to make sure we continue the outreach in the county, and we should use all methods of outreach that are possible to ensure that we gain a broader, inclusive sampling of the community and the county, and we do the right things for projects moving forward.
Ms. Cristol?
Thank you for your question, Ms. Goshen. And I know that this is coming from personal experience as a leader in the Highview Park community. You've been on the front lines of what has not been an exemplary process on the part of Arlington County with the siting of Fire Station 8. I think that responsiveness is possibly the most important issue of this election. I think if we are going to rebuild an Arlington way that really does represent a path forward, there is a role for everyone in this room to play as civic association leaders. There's a role that we need staff and the new county manager to play, and there is a critically important role for our county board members. I will make two commitments. The first is that I am committed to meeting people where they are, and I don't mean that in the broad hypothetical sense. I mean it literally. To give you a brief example, Christian and I were considering deliberating over a site plan that we were trying to form our own opinion on that implicated a child care center just a few weeks ago. By standing in that parking lot, talking to one another, we were able to talk to 3, 4, 5 parents there to pick up their kids from childcare, who could give us some perspective on the fact that Columbia Pike is frankly a childcare desert for affordable, high-quality options. Being physically where citizens are is the most important thing that we can ask of our county board members. I will also promise to reject the "they don't come to our meeting" sentiment that is far too pervasive when it comes to underrepresented groups in Arlington. There are organizations and there are entities that know how to reach young folks, retirees, renters, new Americans. We can learn from them and we can expand who participates in Arlington, and it starts with our leaders.
Thank you very much for the question, Ms. Goshen. Yes, there is clear evidence of a lack of transparency in the decision-making on county board, and that has resulted in some very bad decisions. As an example, 2 recent examples, I will point to the decision to sell the Reeves Farm in Bluemont Park. without adequate notice. In fact, the decision was announced within about 36 hours of the meeting, or the pending decision was announced to the neighbors within about 36 hours of the meeting. Also, there was the RAPS process that I alluded to in my opening remarks, whereby a memorandum of understanding was signed in secret between County Board and the developer Penzance in January of 2013 before the RAPS process that supposedly was created in order to gain citizen input on a future decision. That the decision was already made before the RAPS process even began. And that is flagrant abuse. And the result will be a significantly diminished quality of life for all the residents of the Roslyn community as a result. Other examples include Fire Station 8, where a decision was made to move that fire station without adequate citizen input. And I myself would like to go on record as saying I do not believe that fire station could be prudently moved at this time.
Mr. Fallon and Mr. McMenamin will go first, and then Ms. Cristol for responses.
Thank you. Peter Fallon, Donaldson Run. As a county board member, it's not just about policy discussions, but it's the application of the policy where often folks in the community disagree. So, with that in mind, if you were on the county board today, would you vote for or against the proposed affordable housing plan? And please cite a specific component of the plan as the basis for that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, I would vote against the affordable housing plan. And the reason I would vote against the affordable housing plan is because we've talked about public land for public good in this body last year. You know, there's 3 or more competing interests in this county. There's schools, there's parks, and there's affordable housing. What the county is doing with this is betting the farm on affordable housing without having the budget, the ability to fund that into the future, building 15,000 new units over the next 25 years. That's just wrong. I believe that these components of parks, schools, and affordable housing all must be maintained at the central level so that we gain consensus in the community, because each one of these pieces is an important part of being a part of Arlington. It also is an important piece of having us attract business into the county. So the Affordable Housing Master Plan puts too much emphasis, I believe, and we don't know what the future looks like in terms of our tax base. We have a dwindling tax base at this right now because of the loss of business in the county. And we're betting everything on affordable housing when we have a school crisis, that we need to build more schools and deal with the overcrowding issue with 800 more students coming into the county. So it's all about priorities. And that's not the #1 priority right now for me. Thank you.
Peter, thank you for your question and your leadership. So, like the Civic Federation, I would support the Affordable Housing Master Plan if I were sitting on the county board in this month's deliberations. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I believe that the status quo in Arlington is in fact hostile to the middle class, to the retirees who are hoping to stay here, to the next generation of teachers, firefighters, and young families. I don't think that the Affordable Housing Master Plan is perfect. I have seen it evolve and I've seen it improve. For example, a number of my neighbors in South Arlington have advocated for strategies that will add greater teeth to geographic distribution, which I think is an important principle and something that we need to have real strategies to pursue here in Arlington. But one of the main reasons I would support the Affordable Housing Master Plan is the emphasis on a wider diversity of ownership housing, the accessory dwelling units, for example. And so when I hear wholesale opposition to the Affordable Housing Master Plan, I have to assume one of 2 things. Either these opponents are sitting on some excellent strategies to address the fact that everyone below $200,000 a year in household income is struggling to make it and stay in Arlington, or they're okay with a long run where Arlington is exclusively for the ultra wealthy. I am in Arlington for the long run. I'm planning to be here for the long run. That's not the long run vision of which I want to be a part. I believe that diversity is good for our communities, it's good for our ability to attract businesses, and it's good for Arlington's long run sustainable future. And that's why I would support the plan.
It should be obvious to you from my opening remarks that I strongly oppose the so-called Affordable Housing Master Plan for 2 principal reasons. One, the plan is premised on the assumption that densification will in fact result in more affordable housing. And counterintuitive as this may seem, that is not the case. The fact is that Arlington has been densifying intensely since the year 2000. And in that period of time, we've lost 13,000 units of affordable housing. We have constructed only 7,000 units of committed affordable housing in that time. So it is very clear that whatever our goals are, further densification is not going to further them. The second element is cost. Now this is a landmine because the county itself, in its plan, has refused to reveal the cost of the plan. In other words, it wants us to buy the plan first and then discuss how to pay for it. And I think this is unfair to the citizens of the county. My cost estimate, which is predicated on some numbers done by some members of the CivFed R&E committee, indicate that the cost will probably exceed $92 million per year. This is excessive. This is something that will bankrupt the county. This is a price that will in fact force people who can currently afford their housing out of the county. This is totally counterproductive. Thank you.
Cristol, you can hold your applause until the end. Mr. Cristol?
So I support the Affordable Housing Master Plan without equivocation. And it seems to be a lot of misunderstanding about what exactly the plan contains, who the plan is for, and how you actually implement it. And those are all very important distinctions that must be made. First, the Affordable Housing Master Plan is not just about committed affordable housing units for lower income workers. It's a critically important thing, but it also addresses the rising affordability gap that we have with other segments of our population, our retirees, our young professionals, key to Arlington's sustainability. Secondly, there's a lot of misperception about the cost thereof, people who've done back of the envelope calculations and assuming that this all must be paid for from tax dollars. Nowhere does the plan presume that. In fact, the implementation to come later is something that you actively have to guide and manage to make sure that it is affordable, sustainable, and does what affordable housing is designed to do. And this is critically important, to provide the necessary return to our community. It is very clear from my work as a macroeconomic policy expert that when you have people who are able to live affordably, they then have income that can be spent in your community, at your businesses, in other ways that promote growth in your community. If people are over housing burden, devoting so much of their resources to housing that they are unable to participate economically in those other ways, you undercut the vitality of the rest of your economy. So for those reasons, I support the plan, and I'm going to be carefully working to guide its implementation.
Mr. Gurney? And in this case, will be Ms. Cristol first.
Hi, Tom Gurney. With a significant portion of this thing just cutting in and out of
Yes, it does. Okay, with a significant portion of
Arlington's office space lying vacant, what would you do to shore up the commercial property tax base?
This is an excellent question. It's going to be one of the most important ones facing the next county board, I believe, because a robust commercial sector cutting that vacancy rate does allow us to keep the residential property tax rate manageable without having to make cuts to the things that we value here in Arlington. So it is a top priority, and I appreciate your question. I think the most important thing to think about when we think about addressing our commercial vacancy rate is that we need to plan for the Arlington that we want to see instead of blindly lowering the tax rate. One of the biggest challenges right now facing Crystal City and Roslyn is that we have a commercial stock that's a bit outdated. It's designed for the federal government tenants of the 1970s and 80s. Many of these buildings are slated for redevelopment, and it's critically important that we work with and listen to and learn from our business community as we think about interim uses for these, for example, the micro units, the We Live, We Work, to ensure that these sectors do remain robust. In the long run, I believe it's about attracting new tenants, new commercial businesses here to Arlington, new businesses here to Arlington. For example, learning from Arlington Economic Development that we are well positioned to try to attract med tech industry because of our geographic positioning and also because of the highly educated workforce that we offer. But I do believe it's so important that we think about this in terms of aggressive, proactive planning and not engaging in a race to the bottom of the lowest tax rates or the lowest rents. I don't think that's a race that Arlington can win, nor do I think it's a race we want to win. It guarantees us less tax income at a time when we need more, and it doesn't give us a guaranteed return. So in sum, thinking proactively about the sort of long-range commercial tenants we want to attract, going after them aggressively.
Ms. Clement?
Yes, well, I sort of resent the supposition that we're in a race to the bottom to lower the commercial real estate tax base or taxes. First of all, you should all know that in addition to the regular real estate tax rate that businesses pay in this county, they also pay a commercial real estate surcharge tax, which is about 12%. Now, I have long believed that this is contrary to the state constitution, which requires that the commercial real estate base be taxed at the same rate as the residential. But I can't take issue with it because this tax rate was basically written into law by the state legislature in 2013. What I would do to compensate for the unfair taxation of our commercial business establishments is that I would consider reductions in the BPAL or BID taxes or any other taxes that the business community might bring forward to County Board for consideration of reductions. Thank you.
Next up is Ms. Hobart.
Oh, a couple more responses. Right. Thanks, Mr. Gurney, for the question. And in terms of the commercial sector, there really has to be a multi-pronged approach that includes, among other things, making it easier to start a business in Arlington. Many businesses have reported the difficulty, particularly young new entrepreneurs who are really going to fuel a lot of the growth in trying to deal with our office space vacancies, report difficulty actually getting started with the process. We absolutely have to make it easier. We also have to recognize that from our planning and development processes, sometimes because of the length of time it takes, we sometimes find ourselves with product that's not suitable for the current office environment. We have to maintain flexibility in our planning process. And then, on the side of actually attracting businesses that are already mature here now, we have to provide a range of incentives, and that's not code for money. It is being creative, as we're presently doing, providing a secure fiber optic network that we hope will attract a new class of office tenant in Arlington. Those are the kinds of incentives that we can leverage in order to make Arlington attractive and bring in mature existing businesses. And then finally, we have to recognize that we can position ourselves as a value proposition in the region that provides, when you add up everything else, the best value for businesses. We may not be lowest on rents, but when you add in traffic, when you add in value of schools, when you add in a whole host of other things, we have to make sure Arlington is marketed as such and people know that overall we are a good value proposition compared to other jurisdictions.
Well, with the silver lining eating our lunch here in Arlington County, we've got to be creative about how we're going to go about filling those buildings. The county doesn't own those buildings, landlords own those buildings, and we need to create a dialogue with those landlords and create a summit to find out what it's going to take to fill those buildings. You know, there's a Crystal City site plan that's in place that could be started, with Vornado and other folks over there just don't want to do anything with those buildings, and they're sitting on those buildings that are long in the tooth. So we've got to find ways to create incentives for those folks to go in there and restructure those buildings and to get new tenants in here. We need to attract businesses such as Marriott. You know, I do a lot of business with Silicon Valley companies and Boston companies that are startups and so forth in my consulting practice, in my law practice. And these folks are very innovative, and we need to find those creative ways such as tax relief from the B-poll tax or other ways to give them a break so that they'll come into the county and hire folks. And we live in a really wonderful spot. We're across the river from Washington, D.C. The Pentagon is in our backyard. The Pentagon is relying more and more on the commercial sector to build its communication systems and things of that nature, and to really leverage the economies of scale. So new and innovative businesses have an opportunity in this county. Given our proximity to the Pentagon and to Washington, D.C., it's a great place to do business. We just need to become competitive with the other outlying areas and become competitive with the business B-poll tax, which I pay and I know is very high.
Now we have Ms. Hobart.
Can you
tell us how you would address the rising cost of childcare in Arlington? It's a very high burden on some of our younger families. In fact, some of them spend as much as they'll ultimately spend on college educations, taking care of their preschool children. So how would you address that?
Well, I suppose one option is to expand the pre-K child care programs operated by APS, expand the subsidy for child care in the county. Another option would be to encourage parents wherever possible to organize new child care facilities in the county. I am concerned as a prospective county board member to limit new programs at the present time because of the budget crisis that we face due to sequester and other federal government cutbacks. But I think the issue could be addressed by APS. Certainly, there is a lot of fat in the APS budget. For example, we spend $5,000 more per year to educate our students in all grades than Fairfax County. Even though our own superintendent has indicated that we could, by slightly increasing class size at the secondary level, accommodate many more students at the sub-secondary level, and that would include pre-K students as well. Thank you.
So just 2 weeks ago, thank you, Ms. Hobart, my think tank released some information that shows that our metro area is now the most expensive in the country for a 4-person household of 2 parents and 2 children. It's not because of our rents, it's because of the cost of childcare. So this is something that I know from on an empirical basis, and also as the father of 2 young children, on a very personal basis. And it's going to require that we certainly think about how to expand universal pre-K and lobby the state to make that happen, but also recognize we have space limitations in Arlington. So in order to meet the need, we have to explore expansion of co-op parenting, something that we do innovatively pretty well in Arlington and very successfully in a lot of neighborhoods, and seeing how we can replicate that and make that easier and work with facilities like churches where many child care facilities currently exist to see that that can expand to meet those needs. Federally, this is something that I care about deeply, even though we can't make it happen on the county board, is to see an enhanced child tax credit to recognize how difficult parents have it when it comes to raising their children. But there's not one policy that's going to do it. It's a variety of things. And I think the county board can play a key role in looking at maybe some of the vacancies that we've talked about and seeing how we leverage that for at least temporary uses to serve this child care need. For us, it's going to require that we think really creatively, diligently in ways that we haven't before in order to meet all community needs, and that's the kind of leadership I'd like to bring.
I know firsthand about that because I moved here in 1994 and my wife and I had 2 children. And because we had 2 children, we had to have child care because both of us worked in order to live in the county. And that was back in 1995 and 1998. It was a substantial problem in terms of income, right? Because you spend a lot of money of your income on child care and housing, even at that time in the county. But there was a wonderful program that we got involved with here in Arlington County, and we had a wonderful lady who was certified by the county as being a child care provider. And she did a wonderful job, and she was certified by the county, and I think we can do more of that kind of programming, to find folks out there to let children come into their homes at an affordable price and certify them, because it was the greatest opportunity my kids had ever had, because she was a wonderful lady. She took care of my 2 boys, and it provided the ability for small business also in the county. So I think we can do more of that and expand that program and make sure the parents are comfortable with the child care they're receiving, and also have reputable, good child care at an affordable price.
Thank you for the question. This is an issue that I've worked on with the Commission on the Status of Women, talking to child care providers in Arlington and throughout the Commonwealth. It is, as others have said, a tremendous challenge and reminds us that our affordability picture is much more than just housing. I think this is an issue, of course, not only of facing families, but for economic competitiveness. There's some great national research that suggests when you survey business interests, they'll tell you that reliable childcare for their employees is one of their top factors of economic competitiveness. I think that we have some strategies in terms of inclusive practices in our zoning. Let me give you a couple of examples. We can make childcare a first floor retail equivalent. Another thing that we might consider doing is looking for opportunities in our developer negotiations around community benefits for creating committed affordable rent for childcare, as well as for residents. When you talk to childcare providers around Arlington County, what they will often say is the cost of rent makes it very difficult for them to do their business. I also think that we do need to look at our regulatory structures here in Arlington. As Mike mentioned, and I agree, looking at the licensing and certification, this is a small business opportunity. This is an area where I think we really could benefit from learning from those providers on the front line. For me, the bottom line is looking for ways to increase supply without lowering the quality. When you look, for example, around the Commonwealth, there have been many challenges about children dying in unregulated care. We are lucky to have some of the highest quality standards in the Commonwealth. And the important opportunity here is to increase supply without lowering those standards so that we can bring down costs and help families and businesses thrive. Thank you.
We'll now go through closing statements and in the same order as which we opened. Ms. Clement will start. Actually, if you can do this from the seats.
Arlington is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States, but our streets are crumbling and our quality of life is threatened by the county's misplaced spending priorities. The office vacancy rate is at an all-time high as federal agencies move to cheaper digs elsewhere in Northern Virginia. County Board has thrown money at the problem, but has proposed no business tax relief. Meanwhile, the county spends like there's no tomorrow. We must elect a board that appreciates the difference between needs and wants. We can't afford $1 million bus stops like the one on Columbia Pike at Overmead, while streets need repaving. We don't need an $80 million aquatic center when Northern Virginia is drowning in swimming pools. We can't approve $450 million for new schools only to learn that APS will still be short 2,500 classroom seats. Arlington shouldn't spend $5,000 more per student in Fairfax County, nor should it spend twice as much as Alexandria to construct a new school. If elected, I pledge to stretch your tax dollars by scuttling wasteful capital projects and redirecting funds to address basic needs like streets, schools, libraries, and public safety. I also pledge to seek tax relief for the commercial sector to stave off the exodus of agencies like NSF, Fish and Wildlife Service, and TSA. Finally, I plan to consolidate the county's housing programs in one agency to provide more affordable housing at less cost. I will emphasize conservation by installing solar panels on all public buildings and hiring more inspectors to enforce the county's commercial recycling ordinance. You can find out more by visiting my Facebook page at Audrey Clement for a Greener Arlington or my blog at audreyclement.com. Vote for me, Audrey Clement, on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions this evening, to the Civic Federation for hosting us, to Stephanie for facilitating, and Lois for coordinating. It's really been a pleasure to get to hear from some of you all. I am proud to be one of 2 Democratic nominees. Being a Democrat informs my values. It informs my belief that a quality APS education, for example, is a powerful engine for economic mobility. It informs my commitment to addressing affordability as a community challenge, not an individual family's problem. But I'm not running for county board to join a faction. This afternoon I watched our county board deliberate with staff over the future of library services. And from some of our county board members who will be continuing into 2016 and beyond, I heard interest in topics like library efforts on digital preservation of Arlington's historic record, breaking silos across county division, for example, thinking about the role that library services plays in economic development, and potential joint use opportunities built into the future redesign of our high schools. I look at these issues, I look at these interests, and I see opportunities for partnerships, areas where I would be eager to apply my unique perspective and my renewed energy. Now, I don't doubt that I'll find areas to disagree with too, because there are no easy solutions left in Arlington. We are a community of smart people and tough challenges, and so I can't promise silver bullets on the county board, but I can promise a different way of looking at things, informed by my community experience, informed by my policy background, and yes, informed by my membership in a slightly different generation. And I can promise an absolute commitment to hearing from all sides of the community. I'm running for county board because I believe in the difficult shoe leather work of public service, listening and compromising and listening again on the way to solutions that can help more Arlingtonians thrive. I would be honored to earn one of your 2 votes on November 3rd. Thank you for your consideration this evening.
Arlington is a great place to live. We have creative and a highly educated workforce. We have a metro rail service going through our 2 main commercial corridors. We have award-winning schools that my children have gone through. We have parks, bike, and walking trails. We have community engagement with folks such as you. And we have a safe community to live in, but we can do better. My priorities are to create a more robust economic development effort, address our school capacity issues, replace our aging infrastructure, and make sure the county board is a good steward of our money. My experience as president of this body has shown that I am a proven leader with a record of building consensus and coalitions which will bring the community together to address our challenges on day one. We need to find the Arlington way again and have discussions about projects with the community at the front end and not the back end of the process. I will work to change this. As a county, we need to be friendlier to the business community so the companies will want to come to Arlington and do business, and builders will want to build here again. In sum, the Silver Line was a game changer, and I can work to help attract businesses because I am a small businessman and understand business. Let's work and fill those commercial buildings so that we can balance the tax rate between commercial and residential to fund the county adequately. It is a watershed year, and there are 2 vacant seats, and we must choose a county manager this year. This election will set the course for the county for the next 20 years, so I ask for your vote. Do we remain neighborhood-centric, or do we become considerably more urbanized is a paramount question that is going to have to be dealt with and is important to this election. Today, I believe we strike the right balance, and I want to continue that balance, so I ask for your vote. I am Mike McMenamin. I am running as an independent, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd, and I thank you for your time tonight.
Mr. Dorsey?
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Civic Federation, for hosting tonight's opportunity for us to kickstart this campaign season. I am really honored to be a Democratic nominee and seeking your support on November 3rd. This election, as all of my fellow candidates have outlined, is an important one for many different reasons, not the least of which is that in Arlington, we are a community that has historically tackled the tough things, and we've come out on the other side much better for it. And we are at one of those junctures again, where we look at what appear to be competing priorities and wondering how we're actually going to coalesce around a common vision for our community. But I think the common vision is there. Spending the better part of the spring and summer knocking on thousands of doors, talking to people throughout the primary season, even though folks represented different interests, lived in different parts of the county, had different political ideologies, they all had a similar vision. One in which we are a community that grew sustainably and responsibly, that made sure that public education, a hallmark not just for our children, but in giving our community its value, was maintained and strengthened, and we give the schools what we need. But that we also get as excited about big projects, we get as excited about everyday things as we do about big projects, like keeping our sidewalks in good repair, making sure we have decent infrastructure. They want to make sure that Arlington reflects the best that a municipality can be. And it's not enough for us to just wish that to be true. We actually have to competently make it happen. And I think my experiences in this community, serving our community, and having the experiences with budgeting and running agencies, hiring and managing staffs, make me well equipped to deal with the challenges that we face today. And I want to see that the next 22 years that I live in Arlington see us fulfill our promise. And with that, I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Quite a few from the Arlington County School Board, as well as from the Virginia Senate and the Virginia House of Delegates. Please join for a full round for all of the candidates this evening.